we apparently have a student who has called in, and we want to give them an opportunity to ask a question. Hello.
Hello?
What's your name?
Sharon.
Okay, Sharon, let's hear your question.
I want to know, sir, why are on with this lady instead of Catherine of Aragon?
Say it again.
Oh, my.
Why are on with this lady instead of Catherine of Aragon?
I don't know who to have. Who would you like to ask that question?
To the gentleman.
Very delicate question here.
Very delicate question indeed. Perhaps this lady does not know what great anger can rise up in a king over such an impertinent inquisition that. There may be those who do not know exactly who Catherine of Aragon was. You see, as a good Queen Anne pointed out a bit ago, as a youth, my marriage was pledged to Catherine of Aragon, who was the daughter of Isabella and Ferdinand. You may recall that they were the ones who gave the money to Christopher Columbus to go out.
Only because you wouldn't.
Yes, well. But Catherine, their daughter, was pledged to me in my youth. My brother, Arthur, died, and I became king and married Catherine, and tried very much to, with her cooperation, produce an heir to the throne. But Catherine did not cooperate. She did not cooperate at all. She produced no son. How could there be a king of England after me if there is no son? So, as this woman, the lady who calls in, inquires, why is Anne Boleyn here and not Catherine of Aragon? Because Catherine of Aragon displeased me very, very much. And because it was, if you must know, God's punishment against me for marrying my brother's widow. That was the real truth of it. That is why I had no son. So I, being a proper man and religious, consented to God's law and put her away, as she was never truly my wife, but always my brother's widow. So I did not keep her as my wife, as she was not ever truly under God's law, and then married good Queen Anne, who shall give me many, many sons, I am certain and sure.
Of course.
And that is why Catherine of Aragon is not here at my side just now. I hope that is satisfactory, good lady.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for calling.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
And thank you, Your Majesty, for being so kind to answer that question. I'm sure it angered you a little bit, but please forgive us for imposing on you.
Well, it is a question that needs to be understood. Many people do not understand the true occasion and the complications in it. So
Yes,
I'm
the
happy for the opportunity
complications.
to set it right.
He did find in Leviticus that you should never take well, the widow of your brother. So it's in the Bible. It's all very right.
I see. That's fine.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, I noticed something, Your Majesty, hanging on your clothing that is very, very interesting. Could you explain this disc to me?
Oh, this is one of my favorites. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This was given to me by good Lady Queen Anne. She knows that I have a certain fascination with time, if you will. You see, there is a place called Greenwich where I have a small castle, and there about 400 clocks are kept. Sometimes I go there just to listen to them all ring noon at once. But Greenwich is the place where time is kept and established. So what I have here is a sundial. It is a clock which has no moving parts and requires no winding, no springs, no drops of water. This triangular piece is called the gnomon, and it sits into the face of the sundial this way, with the gnomon pointing to the north and this arrow pointing to the south at any time of the day, provided there is clear sun and not cloudy. The shadow falling on the face of the gnomon will tell us what the time is. Here in this room, which has no sun, but rather this lamplight, the lamplight here tells us that it is 2 o'clock, 2 hours past noon, which is a false time, for these are false suns. But if we were in the true sun, it would tell us the true time. The only difficulty with it is at midnight it is functional only as a paperweight, or for something to use for drawing oblong rounds with.
I see.
But,
Thank you. Your Majesty, I think we have another student who would like to ask one of you a question. Hello, what is your name, dear? Hello?
Hello?
All right, what was your question?
I wanted to ask about how the peasants live. They speak of the peasants' smell, They obviously live in great luxury. I'm interested in how do the peasants live? Is it really in squalor, or are they moderately comfortable? Was there a difference in classes then?
I would say that the peasants sometimes have it a bit better than us in that their houses are much smaller and they're much warmer than ours. You see, the castles that we live in are very dank, as I did say before, and our fireplaces are at the end of the room. It's very, very hard to heat a room such as that size. Now, when the peasants are in their small houses, in their thatched cottages, they have a fire in the middle of the room. They have a hole in the ceiling, and all the smoke goes right up out the top. Well, it's very warm inside there. Sometimes I wish I had one of those out in the back of my castle, but then I wouldn't be as protected. They also grow their own food, so they have a lot of that around. They do wear whatever they possibly can. They don't look as good as we do, but I'm sure they do fine. I'm sure they do, don't they, Henry?
They do.
You told me they were doing fine.
I have seen peasants. I have been to visit them. I go from time to time out through the countryside by carriage or by horse or by whatever way I can, and I visit peasants. Their houses are generally smaller than the castle, as you say, made of mud or sticks, daub and wattle, as we call it. They have either two ways of supporting themselves. They can either grow their own food, as a farmer would, or to pursue some trade. And as a tradesman, as we talked before of farmers or smiths or wrights of some sort, or a cartwright, a man who builds carts, or a wheelwright, a man who builds wheels. A cooper is the one who has makes barrels. But peasants in general don't own the land they live on. They own only a portion of the grain that they grow on it, or a portion of the dairy products that they get from the cattle that are usually owned by a nobleman of some sort. They don't live, obviously you're right, madam, they do not live as well as we do. But we live as well as we do to give them something to aspire to. Of course, they'll never make it because they'll always be peasants. That's the law. At least that's the way things work. You can tell peasants easily. They smell badly. They wear brown clothing because they cannot afford red dyes and colorful dyes as we do. In general, they don't have much money. The food they eat gets old and spoils before they get to their next meal, if they have more than one meal a day at all. Peasants generally aren't as happy as we are.
The ones that see Henry, of course, love him the most because they know that he loves them.
Thank you very much for your answer, and thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now that we've answered some questions from our contemporaries here, I'd also like to ask you some questions about your time, particularly, Your Majesty, King Henry, about, well, wait a minute, I think we have another caller. Let's answer the caller first.
jolly
I'll
good,
save
yes.
my question